Good evening and welcome to Crossroads. All right, this may sound funny, but I want to give my take on the Barbie movie. Now, I've seen conservatives criticizing it for spreading feminist intersectionality. I've seen the left criticizing it for Ken's misogyny. I've seen a lot of millennials and younger generations criticizing both sides for completely missing the point of the movie. And I found it interesting actually hearing from some of my younger female colleagues that many of them don't see the movie as being feminist at all. And in fact, the general opinion among them was that the film actually criticizes feminism. And, these are women who I'd say are among the more feminine and traditional that I know. With the more than $200 million already at the box office, well, it's doing really well. And it's also not often we see movies these days, especially, cause so much debate. Even walking around town in New York, New Jersey, I've been picking up random conversations of people talking about the movie. So why are they talking about a Barbie movie? Why are we talking about it right now? Well, for me, this means that the film is resonating with something. Now, look, of course, the big narrative is feminism. I'll give my take on this. But first on the movie itself. Now, I took the film as a satire on both feminism and on the men's movement. I also took it as a satire on both the patriarchy, so-called, and the matriarchy, so-called. For me, it was actually poking fun at these things by showing them at the ridiculous extremes. I personally don't think it was intended to be taken as serious as people are actually taking it. It also showed people waking up from all the fakery. Now, Barbie decides she doesn't want to be fake anymore. Ken realizes identity doesn't need to revolve around Barbie, and there's a broader message between a mother and a daughter of the challenges women face from social expectations and all the complicated ideas, notably, of the modern world. It ends with an idea of thinking for yourself, and I personally like that. Now, the big story is that Barbie Land is the inversion of human land. It's the matriarchy. And Ken goes to the human world and learns about the patriarchy. He comes back to Barbie Land with these ideas and upsets the dynamics of their society. I'd say this is actually satire in its purest form. What better way to poke fun at our gender politics by showing the polar opposite? The irony is that Ken does to Barbie Land what many people believe feminism did to human land. And it goes about this with a good deal of comedy. Now, first on feminism. The reality is that many women feel they cannot afford to be feminine. They don't feel safe enough for it. I've had this actually explained to me by women who I'd actually regard as very traditional. They feel they can't depend on men these days to take care of them or support them. Not enough men these days are willing to step up to the plate. They don't want that level of commitment. They can't take that level of responsibility when it comes to traditional marriage. At least they don't think they can. And even marriage isn't foolproof enough for women to trust their futures in. It's because of that that even the very traditional women still need to think about their careers. Now, for men, one of the best compliments you can get from a woman is if she tells you she feels safe enough around you to let herself be feminine. Now, I'm the father of a 13-year-old girl. She wants to fly fighter jets when she grows up. She also does Chinese classical dance, and she reads probably more books than I do. We have a lot of discussions in ancient history and on modern culture. She recently pointed out that I don't know enough about the virtues of women in ancient history. And while I know about Cleopatra, for example, and her famed skills of seduction, I was apparently unaware of her many abilities in statesmanship. And there were other women like her who, as my daughter explained to me, actually managed to be great leaders throughout history while also not losing their feminine virtues. And this ties to a part of the debate that I think a lot of feminism actually misses. Now, the irony of the feminist movement is that it's really a criticism of feminine virtue. It demonizes femininity. It's the narrative, ironically, that traditional feminine traits are actually evil, and that they're things forced on women by men, and that ironically, according to feminism, apparently women need to become more like men because the so-called patriarchy has denied them this power. Now, I'd say this actually misses some real points. The so-called women's movement has ironically become an anti-women's movement. The Barbie movie, in my opinion, touches on this. It's the cognitive dissonance of being a woman that's highlighted in the subplot of the human world, the mother and the daughter in the film. It shows all the conflicting narratives that women face these days. They need a good man, but they should also be in conflict with men. They need to be career women, but they also need to be empathetic and good listeners. They need to be strong, but not too strong. Now, there's something that's framed these days as ancient feminism, although I wouldn't personally call it feminism. It actually embodies what modern feminists try to achieve. And it does this without destroying femininity, without demonizing men as well. It's what's known as stateswomanhood. It's the tradition of the inner strength and wisdom of ancient women, the foremothers. Now, a piece from the homeschooling resource TJ Ed, which I like quite a bit on this, states, in the ancient stories, it is women who take this initiative, women who teaches that all other vows in society are only as strong as the marriage vow, women who instill steel in young hearts, hearts which will not bend to temptation or lose traditions. It adds, maternal ambition literally changes the world in ways that no career could. Now, what's interesting about the Barbie movie is that what's missing in the conflicts of the Barbie land matriarchy or the human world so-called patriarchy is actually the idea of children. It's a movie of children's playthings running into the extremes of real-world conflicts of gender and social expectations. The reality, though, is that neither side of the conflict represents what I'd actually consider as true men or true women. And it is the problem many younger generations these days actually face. Now, I'd say a child is someone who is dependent on others to care for them. A child cannot care for themselves. Someone else has to care for them. An adult is someone capable of caring for themselves, of taking care of their own. And a true man or a true woman is someone capable of caring for others. But sometimes we also face conflicts in how much we care for others. Now, there's always the risk that we lose ourselves while trying to win the attention and the approval of the opposite sex. You see this a lot. It's one of the greater ironies of the so-called manosphere, in my opinion. Despite its total focus on masculinity, its real focus, ironically, was mostly on winning the attention of women. It's the Ken in the Barbie movie trying to act all tough while really just craving Barbie's approval. And this goes into the final message of the film. We're all being bombarded by mixed messages. For girls, notably, feminism has mostly failed them. But they also need to think about their careers and going through the daily grind. Culture has sexualized them, but tells them it's also wrong for doing so. They feel they need to change who they are to fit in and to be accepted, but they're also told that they don't need to change themselves. Then they see men and the traditional ways of being a wife or a mother. And then they often don't get the sense that men are willing to have that type of commitment or that type of responsibility. In fact, even the macho men's movement types, despite all the chest thumping and noise, are usually not willing to commit. More likely they're interested in using women sexually. And this leaves women facing the conflict between expectations and reality. It can actually be overwhelming. The solution may be that we all need to step back from all these conflicts, to stop comparing ourselves so much, to take some time to find ourselves, to grow our own characters, and maybe then we can all just be a bit more real.